Hey everybody, it's Brian Asbury, and I just wanted to welcome you to today's episode. If you could, like today's episode, hit that subscribe button, and let's continue to grow the developmentally speaking brand.
Today, my guest is former ECW, WCW, WWE, and Impact star Kid Cash. How's it going today, sir?
It's good.
Good.
Good. How about yourself?
Can't complain. What made you want to get into professional wrestling?
Uh, it was just by chance sort of a situation. I was a fan of it, and I grew up watching like NWA and Mid Atlantic Wrestling in Virginia, where I'm from, and just wasn't a thought about. I never thought about getting into it. I just happened to meet a couple of wrestlers that were in for an independent show in my hometown, and I met them at the gym, and the Road Warriors. There was the Road Warriors. There was Tim Horner, and a couple of guys that he had trained at that time. Anthony Michaels, Brian Logan. They were working out at the gym, and but even back then, I worked out, and a lot of people I had longer hair, and so many people thought I looked like either Brian Pillman or Owen Hart. So it was one or the other, and so that got brought up in the gym, and then one thing led to another. I got invited to come down to the fairgrounds that night and watch the show, and I did. And Tim Horner and the Road Warriors actually, were the ones that kind of talked me into it a little bit. And then a guy named Doug Ward and Preston Fitzgerald in Virginia, there they wound up having a training camp. I just went there one night, maybe two nights, and felt what it felt like to be, get slammed. And I mean, there was no training session involved. It was just, just wanted to know what it was like to hit the ropes,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing, and get slammed, get chopped, and I got hit in the back with a chair, that kind of thing. And they had a show the next week, I believe, and I think it was the next week or the next 2 weeks or something, and just, talked to me, was like, hey man, you want to come down and join in? And I did, and then it was a catastrophe for me. It was awful. And then just talking to Tim Horner and those guys, and then I started going down to Tennessee, working around Eddie Golden and Steve Skyfire, Jason Broyles. He was easy money
Mm-hmm.
back in the day. But Eddie Golden and guys like that at first were really the ones who taught me the sport, and taught me, the movements and stuff in the ring. And then I met Ricky Morton from the Rock and Roll Express, like shortly. I mean, it was like probably just a few months after that started happening. And he liked me, and we had a great, conversation one night. And he just thought it was cool that I wasn't a mark for the business. I wasn't out there, really kissing his ass,
Mm-hmm.
I was just talking to him like a human being, because technically that's what I was. I was a welder, in Virginia. I mean, so in the last couple of months, I've been hanging out with a bunch of wrestlers, learning the sport, that kind of thing. So, and he just took me from there. I just got in the car with him, and from I became his traveling partner, and I watched his pictures and his gimmicks, and drove the car and carried the bags and stuff. And I watched every one of his wrestling matches
Mm-hmm.
for a good, good solid year, and I mean, I was participating in that, also doing independent shows on my own with guys like Eddie Golden and stuff like that. And, yeah, I mean, so it just all kind of started that way, and then it just, kept going, and for about 3 or 4 years, and then kind of just went out on my own. Just started taking those chances that guys try to take
Mm-hmm.
to step out there. So I started what left my area of wrestling because I was there every single
Mm-hmm.
weekend, and I mean, I drove no more than 50 miles, and so it was that kind of a deal, and I wanted more,
Mm-hmm.
just wanted to get my name out there, so I started booking myself out and back up in Virginia and in Tennessee and Georgia and just North Carolina. North Carolina became like a little hub for me too. I was working a lot in North Carolina because there was like 4 or 5 different promoters
Mm-hmm.
there and stuff, and just enough for me to hone my own skills and get my own identity, kind of thing. And then I would team back up with Ricky here and there, just and then met Rob Van Dam
Hmm.
in North Carolina doing one of those indie shows for a guy named Greg Price, and we just kind of hit it off. I mean, right off the bat, because when I rolled up to the fairgrounds where we were wrestling at, I just drove like 5 hours, I think. So I just kind of sat there for a second, wanted to, gather my thoughts and stuff. And so I fired up a bowl and I started hitting it. And I just kind of sat back and blew it out, And then as I looked over to my side, I seen those two in not the next car, but the car the next to that one, like looking at me, just like laughing. It was Rob and Greg. They were sitting in the car, so they knew what I was doing, and they were doing the exact same thing. So it just, that was our meeting for the first time, and we just kind of really hit it off. And he liked my style of wrestling, and uh, he started talking about ECW and stuff one night, and I drove from Johnson City to Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I did a show with those guys, and he told me that night, he goes, "We're in Philadelphia tomorrow night in ECW. If you show up, I can guarantee you a match. I think you should be in the company." And I
Hmm.
was like, "Oh, okay, cool." And I wasn't really putting two and two together at the time, So he was telling me what channel it came on. It was on FSN back then. Came on about midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning in Johnson City, where I was living at. And so I drove back that same night after my match from Winston-Salem back to Johnson City because in those days you had to. You couldn't waste any money,
Hmm.
because you had bills to pay. If you were going to do this for a living, then you really had to do it for a living. You couldn't work, a shoot job and
Hmm.
stay on the road and say no to bookings. You had to get your name out there. So I committed myself that way. I only worked on the weekends, sometimes a Thursday or, but mostly Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays and things like that. But so I got back home. I got home about 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. And so I turned on the TV and I caught the last 30 minutes. And I was like, well, shit, I can do all of that. I do that every night. I mean, that's what's so special. And I was like, all right. So I called him real quick and I was like, hey, man, I was like, I was just checking this out. I was like, so who runs this? And he was like, Paul Heyman. And I was like, oh, okay. He goes, I think I can get you a job if you show up. He says, but you're going to have to show up. That's the only catch. And I was thinking, well, damn, Johnson City to Philadelphia, man. Holy shit. That's like 16 fucking hours. And I was like, all right. So in the spur of the moment right there, I mean, I made the decision and
Hmm.
that was where I was kind of going with the whole thing of once I left Ricky, I had to take those chances. I didn't know where I was going or what I was doing, but had to take those chances to see what was going to happen for me next.
Hmm.
So at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, I took a shower, I repacked my clothes, I got in the car, and drove all the way to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, from right there. And I think I got there at like 2 o'clock the next day or something like that, just dead tired. Met up with Rob, took a nap in his room, and I think we went to the gym after that or something, got something to eat, went to the arena. And when I walked in, he took me right over to Paul, and he goes, "Hey, this is back then I was David Jericho."
Hmm.
And he was like, "Yeah, this is my buddy David Jericho." And he was like, "David Jericho, how's Ricky Morton?" And I was like, "Oh, he's good. Yeah, he's good." And he was like, "Heard you guys are tearing it up on the Indies down south and blah blah blah, and you were doing really good." And I was like, "I'm trying, just trying to take one step." He said, "Good. You got your gear?" I was like, "I do." And he was like, "It's good. You're on in about 15 minutes." And that's how it started. Um, when I got my gear, I dressed as quick as I could. I basically dressed in the parking lot. I just went right back out to the parking lot because they had the interstate overpasses over the
Hmm.
building at ACW. So I just changed my clothes right there, fans watching and everything, and I just changed right there, walked right back in the building, and I was in a 6-man tag. And it turned out that the crowd knew who I was. And that just kind of blew everybody away because
Hmm.
that crowd shouldn't have known who I was. But a lot of smart marks back then, there was the dirt sheets.
Hmm.
That's what everybody read back then was the dirt sheets and the Pro Wrestling Illustrated. You know, there was no internet, to really get on and find anything out. So you read the dirt sheets. And apparently, a lot of those fans read the dirt sheets because Tommy Dreamer stopped me at the curtain and he was like, "Listen," he goes, "this crowd's probably going to shit on you and eat you alive. This is a completely different crowd than what you're used to. Don't let it get to you. Just be you. Get out there, ignore them, and just wrestle." And I was like, "Okay, got it." Boom, the curtain opened and everybody started chanting rock and roll. Because I used to dress at that time, I was still dressing in the Rock and Roll Express type outfits,
Hmm.
the fringe and the bandanas and things like that. And they just started chanting rock and roll, and so I didn't get any booze at all. I got like nothing but cheers and chants and stuff. So had a good showing in the match, and for as quick as it was. And when we got to the back, I thanked Paul and got my draw money for the night, and I was like, "What'd you think?" And he goes, "I loved it." I was like, "Great." I was like, "I'd like to come back sometime." He goes, "Well, what about Staten Island tomorrow night?" And I did that, and then we went to Boston, and then from Boston, I drove all the way from Boston back to Johnson City, and then I got a call from Debbie, the lady who did all the travel, and she said, "Paul wants to know if you're interested that you come to next week's run." And I was like, "Absolutely." So it took me from Boston about close to 20 hours to get back home. You
Hmm.
know, and so I got home and I slept for the whole day next day, and then I had about 3 days really to get myself ready because it was going to take me a whole entire day of driving to get to the
Hmm.
next step. So man, and again, that's how it started. I did that little run right there, and plus I was doing other things too. I was going down to Mexico. I was going to Canada. I was going, I was
Hmm.
starting to sprout a little bit, and start getting things done. And but that's really where it all started, how it all began, and the ECW kicked it all off for me.
Was it as crazy as it seems back then with that ECW crowd and this like a cult following?
Yeah, oh, it was definitely I hadn't heard or even seen them up until that point because I lived in the South and I was
Hmm.
on the road every weekend. So I mean, I didn't really watch much TV,
Hmm.
So and the only wrestling I knew at that time was like WWE and WCW. So that's if I did watch wrestling, that's what I watched.
Hmm.
And I didn't really if I on a Friday or Saturday night, at 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm usually driving to another town or driving home, from a show. So I didn't really get to catch it. And so it was shocking at first. I mean,
Hmm.
but it was for me, it was a cool shock. I
Hmm.
was thinking, this is a badass crowd. Yeah, man, rock on. That's how I felt about it. But I saw other guys come in there, for tryouts and stuff, and they just get completely intimidated by the crowd. I mean, they would start off really good in their match, and then maybe, every match is not going to be perfect. Not there.
Hmm.
There's very seldom there is perfect matches, but there's very very few and far between perfect matches. So there's always going to be a hiccup somewhere in a match. But the thing about it was WCW, WWE, and those companies, the crowds didn't catch those kind of things.
Hmm.
This crowd did. It was almost like they looked for it to happen. And as soon as it happened, they were like, "You fucked up. You fucked up." They were waiting all night long to be able to chant that word, that phrase, "You fucked up." I mean, it really was. So it was kind of a love hate, there with the fans because they legitimately waited on you to fuck up.
Hmm.
They just made rub your face in it, you know. So you tried your best not to fuck up, but and if you did, you would just. I mean, me myself. I mean, I would. Not that I fucked up a lot. I mean, but if I ever did
Hmm.
miss something or miss a move or whatever, miss a spot, um, I would just like I would just kind of play back to them, and what are you gonna do? Can you do any better? That kind of shit. And then after a while doing that, the crowd just, they start laughing with you instead of at you. So,
How long? Any particular moments stand out from the rest during your time in ECW?
yeah, well, I won the TV title there. Rob did a run in and stuff. I did it at the Hammerstein Sold Out
Hmm.
Arena. Beat Rhino. Did my big notable dive to the crowd, knocked everybody down. That's probably one of the highlights of that me being there. But I tell everybody that asks me those kind of questions, I was so excited to be there. I didn't know much about them
Mhm.
until I got there, but once I got there, I just felt like this is where I want to be. I instantly quit thinking about going to the WWE and the
Mhm.
WCW. I really did. I mean, I didn't really care if I got a job there then. This company was like just really cool, and for that time, they were kind of like really up to date,
Mhm.
with the wrestling and the characters and stuff. They didn't stand back there and tell you what to do. There were no agents.
Mhm.
There wasn't an agent to, you tell your match to, and then they try to be like, well, maybe you should do this, or maybe instead of doing that, they let us do what we felt we need to do, and the crowd let us know if we did good or not,
Mhm.
you know and we never let the crowd dictate us. We would go out there and do our shit, and the crowd would, try to dictate you and stuff. But I love the company of the company. None of the wrestlers ever let that happen. You
Mhm.
know, we would do our match, and we would be like, "Fuck you! You don't like what we're doing, then don't come watch. Don't come watch us." And so there was that respect that the crowd had with all everybody, and I respected everybody there because I mean, everybody was so creative.
Mhm.
I mean, there wasn't a person there that I was ever in the ring with that we didn't sit back there in the back and like just pull our brains out. We were just like, trying our damnedest to stand out.
Mhm.
We wanted to be that match that everybody remembered, and it just didn't matter who you worked. So it was really refreshing to wrestle guys like that because I can tell you, I mean, I've been in TNA, been in WCW, been in WWE. There's guys out there that are hugely competitive, hugely
Mhm.
athletic and stuff, but on those kind of schedules, it's hard to perform to your top ability every
Mhm.
single night, And then there's a lot of guys that will take a night off, and it's a lot of guys will grab a hold of that and be like, yeah, that's cool. We can, it'll give us a night off, but you really shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
You should try to keep your professionalism and your athleticism and give that crowd a show every single night
Mhm.
that you're on the road. That's your livelihood, in my opinion. And that's what I was told growing coming into business. That's your livelihood. People are not going to remember your name as long as they're going to remember your style.
Mhm. I
you
agree.
know, they're going to be like, you remember that guy that used to do that move or used to do this? Okay, well, what's his name? What's his name? And it
Mhm.
might take them a minute or two to remember the name, but they're going to remember your style of wrestling, you
Mhm.
know, long after you're retired, So you got to keep that momentum,
Mhm.
keep it moving. So that's the wishes way I've always felt. But yeah, there are guys out there that'll lay down on you for, a night while they're on tour, just so they can, heal up or feel
Yeah.
like they're healing up. And you're not healing up. You're not going to heal up because you don't have enough time even at home to heal up before you got to go back to work, So it's going to take months.
So when it came time for WCW, how did that come about?
WCW, I had worked matches with them on and off for years,
Mhm.
and I talked to them about going to do things and with them. But at that time, I had other offers.
Mhm.
Really, back in the mid to late '90s, all the way, whenever WCW was still doing hot and everything like that. I mean, I was getting like all kinds of other offers, and back then even through my career, I wasn't so much about the fame as I was about making the money.
Mhm.
Cause I learned the real world because when I graduated high school, I had to go into the real world and work, construction and be in the
Mhm.
real world, and, then I got to the wrestling industry where you didn't really work physically, you
Mhm.
did, but not like, in the construction industry where you're working 12 to 15 hours a day in the hot burning sun and sweating your ass off, picking up heavy things and, that kind of thing. Wrestling, you're still working hard, but you're doing it in a much, much different way.
Mhm.
And whenever I sat back there early in my career, like honestly, the first year that I was with Ricky Morton, I saw it. I saw
Mhm.
everything. I saw the guys that I grew up watching on TV. that were superstars in the 80s and the early 90s, um, were now indie guys. You know what I'm saying? They were making
Mhm.
those hundreds and thousands of dollars and those millions or whatever, but now they're indie guys, and now they're in their 50s. Now they're in their early 60s.
Mhm.
Um, some of them still had some of their money, some of them didn't. The ones that didn't were working because they needed the money. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, how many of these guys don't have a retirement plan?
Mhm.
You know, I
Yeah.
mean, there's no retirement plan, no 401k in any paycheck I've ever gotten in professional wrestling. You
Mhm.
know,
Mhm.
it's a large amount depending on where you're working.
Mhm.
WWE was by far the most money I ever made in the wrestling industry. So it just really depends on where you're going. And I mean, you need things in life. Wrestling doesn't give you insurance.
Mhm.
I got insurance a long time ago. I mean, a very long time ago. Whenever I was in my early 20s, and I was fresh from being a construction worker, and I had insurance, and I renewed it, and I was a pro wrestler now. And so, of course, they asked me what my occupation was, and I said I was an independent contractor. They didn't ask any more questions. They just
Mhm.
asked me what else. Didn't ask me what kind of independent contractor or anything like that. So I get 1099. So yes, I'm an independent contractor. Okay. So I go and break my leg and tear my knee. So I have to have a knee replacement and I have to have a metal rod put in my tibia. Um, and I had to have my ankle redone. And all in one match, all in one move. And so I'm in the hospital. I get emergency surgery and everything. I mean, I didn't wait any time whatsoever. I got right out of the ambulance. Boom. They got me right in, man. I was boom. I woke up the next morning and some lady standing over me with a clipboard asking me how I was going to pay for the surgery because my insurance company just canceled me about 10 minutes ago. Yeah. So I called my insurance company and they said that I'd lied to them and told them that that I was and I was like I am and legitimately an independent contractor.
Mhm.
They were like, well, that's not the kind of independent contracting that we want to cover. So I saw it. There is no retirement plan.
Mhm.
There is no retirement. I mean, so you got to plan for this. And over the years, I went to school. I got a degree. Construction management and stuff because I know construction. I grew up in construction. My
Mhm.
family members are construction workers. My dad owned a welding business for 40 years, and I worked for him, throughout my teenage years and my early years. And, so I mean, you got to go with what you know and what you're experienced at. I just upped the ante a little bit. So now I don't have to, when I retired from wrestling, I didn't have to go into the field anymore, and work
Mhm.
field. I'm a superintendent. I'm a project superintendent now. So I have a salary. I have insurance. I have, I make pretty good money. I make as much as I did in some of the companies that I worked for as a wrestler. Yeah, so I'm doing well. But I mean, I just seen it a long time ago. I seen
Mhm.
the guys in the dressing room that had nothing left, and they're still hoping for that one more run.
Mhm.
They have it in their heart they're going to get that one last run and everything's going to be better. You know, no, it's not going to happen. I mean, it might, but
Mhm.
it's a very, very, very minute chance that it's going to happen.
Mhm.
And I learned that stuff. You remember the Mass Superstar,
Mhm.
Bill Eadie. Bill Eadie I got a credit to the guy who actually woke me up. As far as what to do after wrestling and how to conduct my career and things like that. And he told me a long time ago, he was like, if you're not gonna if you're not gonna stay in this until the day you die, till you die in the ring, then you run your career the way you want your career run. If you don't agree with anything, screw the job.
Mhm.
Okay, don't sell your soul, don't sell your life, don't suck no dick, don't fucking let nobody suck your dick. Just be straight, and if they
Mhm.
can't handle you being straight, then you don't need to do business with them because at the end of the day, when it's all said and done,
Mhm.
you're gonna go one direction while wrestling's gonna continue to go to this direction.
Mhm.
You're not going to be able to keep up. You're going to lose your job one day.
Mhm.
Now, what are you going to do? And I was like, yeah, you're right. He goes, what are you going to do? Be a bouncer? I'm like, no, bouncer. And he goes, do you want to do something that's going to secure your future? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, that would be the smart thing to do. And he goes, then maybe you should start thinking about that now as a
Mhm.
young man. And then by the time you're my age, you'll be like I am. And, this man was a really big deal in the wrestling business. He had a
Mhm.
lot of great characters, the superstar, demolition. I mean, this man made bukus of money in the sport. But what mostly impressed me is that after he retired, he lives in Atlanta and he owns a security company, and he's also works, I think, in the Department of Corrections for like teenage, guys. He counsels them and stuff
Mhm.
like it. Licensed, so he's got a psychology degree and things like that. That just totally just blew me away and
Mhm.
impressed me. While on the other hand, I'm looking over here at these other guys who were in the same shoes as him. They're still thinking they're going to get that one last run,
Mhm.
and when they leave, they still going to the bar and partying.
Mhm.
Bill Eadie gets in his car, and if he's out of town, he goes to his hotel or a Denny's, and him and I would have long conversations, and then we would go to bed,
Mhm.
or he would get in his car and drive all the way back home to his wife. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
I just decided that's the kind of life that that's the way I want to go.
Mhm.
So over the period of time, that I was in, while I was sitting in the stands watching the ring get built and stuff like that, I was online doing college and
Mhm.
courses and things like that. Trying to better myself. I mean, it took me a period of God, almost like 6 or 7 years. You know what I'm saying? Because
Uh-huh.
you would go on tour and you can't do, you can't
Mhm.
put your time and effort into it, and especially if you work for WWE. I mean, it's very hard to even find that time
Yeah.
to do take a test, much less read a book or a couple of chapters. So the only time I could really do that was whenever we would get to the building early,
Mhm.
and we would sit there waiting, because after catering, you got like 3 or 4 hours to do absolutely nothing. So I'd go up in the stands and I would just have my laptop and I would just, do a course here or a course there. And then I'd wait till I get back to my hotel room, or I
Mhm.
would wait till I got to the back seat of the car, when somebody else was driving. And I would try to finish what I started, by the time I got home till I can send it off. Sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't make it, on time, but I mean, it took over a period of about 6 years. I finally got it. Finally got it. You know, but it was cool. But I mean, even when I worked for WWE, and
Mhm.
TNA and all those companies, I was working in the union.
Mhm.
So on the days that I wasn't on the road, I'm dude, I would get a red eye back home. That same night, I would be changing clothes in the cab,
Mhm.
to get back, just in my sweatpants to get on an airplane, fly back home to be at work at 6 o'clock in the morning. Tying rebar, building runways and stuff,
Mhm.
working for the Carpenters Union in Nashville. So I needed insurance, so I
Mhm.
got my insurance. I got retirement. I was with the union for 28 years total. So I got vested, so I have a retirement plan now. So as soon as I do retire, I'm going to get a few $1,000s a month from the union, and then the company that I've been with for quite a while now, and I
Mhm.
have a salary with and a retirement plan with. I'll get a retirement from them too. And yeah, so I
Mhm.
mean, and then not to mention, over the years I've been putting my own in a
Mhm.
401k, and stuff like that. So I mean, I feel comfortable that when I'm 70 or 80 years old and I can't work anymore, that I won't need wrestling, know, to pay a bill,
Yeah.
you and I'll be able to pay for my probably medication that I might have to be on. You know, I just had a hip replacement last year, a couple knee replacements and stuff. I still got to have both my rotor cuffs worked on and stuff. So if I didn't do what I did, I'd be a bag of bones right now because I got some really great insurance with the company that I worked for. And
Mhm.
all the surgeries that I've had up to now was through them. you know, and they give top notch insurance, so I don't have nobody's argued anything. I
Mhm.
mean, So, I mean, I'm getting the things done here and there, giving myself time to heal and get back on track, after one's over with. And then, so, a surgery a year, a couple more, and I should be back to, back to being not perfect again, but, I can, be back to
Mhm.
normal anyway.
When WWE bought out WCW, was there any initial interest right then?
I signed with WCW.
Hmm.
I literally just signed with WCW. I went and did a Thunder, and and like I said, I've been working with them for years. I do dark matches, come in and do enhancement matches and stuff. Just here and there. And then after a while, as my name started building, I quit doing that. I quit doing the enhancement work. If they wanted me to do a dark match and have a competitive match with somebody that they're intending to push, then
Hmm.
yeah, I would do it. But I wouldn't go out there on TV and just get jobbed out. So I quit doing those kind of things. But when it finally happened, it was after the whole ECW, closing and things like that. And it took me a couple months to get a formal release from ECW, but
Hmm.
we had already been talking with Terry Taylor before ECW had actually, shut down. So that it was already in the works and stuff. But when that happened, after a few months, I finally got the formal release. Went down for the tryout match. Is what they wanted, So I went down there for the Thunder, and I wound up wrestling Easy Money,
Hmm.
which they had turned his name to Jason Jett, which was a blessing to me because he's probably the one guy in all of wrestling that I've ever had the most chemistry with.
Hmm.
Two completely different people, live two completely different lifestyles, think completely differently, the opposite of each other. But when we get in the ring, we just mesh.
Hmm.
It's we've wrestled matches before and didn't even call a damn thing, and just went out there and had the match of the night.
Hmm.
I mean, we would tear the indies up, and if you go back and watch some of the ECW stuff that we did, that's where me and him, we and him and I invented the Rana bomb.
Hmm.
Okay, it was already out there, but it was done in different methods and different ways and stuff. The way he and I did it,
Hmm.
was the only way that we did it. But and if you ever go back and watch any of my matches, I never gave it to anybody other than him. Only one I would ever trust to do it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So when they bought it out, did they contact you, or because there were
Well,
some
what
people?
happened was I wrestled the
Hmm.
Thunder. When after that match was over with, Jason actually got a contract that night too. We both did. He had been there a few weeks before me because I was waiting on my release.
Hmm.
So he had already been there doing some matches with the guys, unsigned. So when that same night that we wrestled at the end of the match, when we went down to Gorilla Stand, John Laurinaitis was standing there, and he gave us both a contract and told us both the same things: take it home, look it over, show your lawyer, show your girlfriend, sign it if you want to, don't sign it if you don't. He was pretty straight up about it.
Hmm.
And the contract was pretty straightforward. I mean, it was so with me, I had Jimmy Hart was a big close person to me in back in the day. So Jimmy kind of like, took over a little negotiation for me and everything like that. So it did hold it up another couple of weeks. Everything went through. I finally signed. Uh, and I signed, and 1 week later, I had my package. I was supposed to go to Panama City
Hmm.
and everything like that. I was going to actually wrestle in the light heavyweight little division there. And the day before, John Laurinaitis calls me and he was like, "Hey, just take a hot seat tonight. Just go ahead and." I was like, "Is everything okay?" And he goes, "Everything's great. Everything's fine. Just there's some changes happening, uh, and you'll probably see it on the show if you watch it tomorrow night." And I'm like, "Okay." He says, "I'll be contacting you by Monday of next week. Don't worry about it." And I'm like, "Okay." So I watched the show and I seen, okay, well, all right. So I guess they got bought out.
Hmm.
Uh, I didn't hear anything. I mean, I was collecting a paycheck. They were sending me a paycheck. I didn't hear anything for weeks. I mean,
Hmm.
I'm talking about weeks. And finally, I got called from him, and he just basically told me the way it was. He was like, "We got two companies with a lot of people in it. There's a lot of people we're letting go." He goes, "A lot of people we're keeping." He goes, "We would like to keep you. Uh, we do have ideas, no plans. We just have ideas, but we need you to move to Cincinnati and wrestle with Heartland Wrestling and Les Thatcher and guys, you know." And I'm sitting there, and I was like, "Okay, so how long will I be there?"
Mhm.
You know? And he was like, "Well, kid, you know how it is, kid. His way, hey, you know how it is, kid. It's just the way. This is the business. It could take 3 weeks. It could take 3 fucking years. Who knows? Depends. I can't give you any. I can't read a crystal ball. I don't have one." And I'm
Mhm.
like, "Okay, I got it." Uh, you got to figure at that time, by that time, I was already like 31 years old.
Mhm.
I was established grown man. I had a house, I had a family. I had the whole thing. I can't just get up and move and take a pay cut.
Mhm.
Oh, and that was another thing. They were going to renegotiate my contract down from what we negotiated to, down to $65,000 a year, and I was going to make $50 a night or something like that,
Wow.
wrestling at Heartland. Now they was expecting me to leave my house, family, everything, uh, move to Cincinnati and rent in an apartment, and then just wrestle for $50 a night, collecting a
Mhm.
WWE paycheck, but it's only for 65,000 a year. Um, so that was a big, huge cut
Mhm.
from what I had originally, you know, uh, negotiated. And
Mhm.
hell, I didn't even make. I made more in ECW than that.
Mhm.
And that was the very first contract ever. You know, and so yeah, I was like, I talked to Jimmy about it, and we just decided, and then I talked to Hulk Hogan too.
Mhm.
Uh, that's whenever they were putting the XWF together,
Mhm.
and they had ideas about bringing me in, and so they were like, "Listen, here's the deal. Just my opinion. You do what you want. I'm not going to run your career or anything like that. But I think that you're already established. People already know who you are. You're already a character. You're already a superstar. So why would you sit on the shelf
Mhm.
in a company that nobody watches on TV? And Lord only knows when you'll get on TV. And then by the time you do get to TV, they'll probably most likely change your name, change your look, change your character, and change everything. So do you want to continue being Kid Cash? And I was like, absolutely. I put a lot of time and effort into this, and I even copyrighted my name, you know. So he was like, well, the only way to do that is to turn them down. But if you do, just letting you know, I have a contract waiting on you.
Mhm.
Like, hmm, okay, makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah.
I went on ahead and did. So when John and I talked, I told him I was trying to be as business and as polite as I could, and was just let him know. I mean, ran down the whole thing. I'm a grown man. I'm in my 30s, bro. I got a family.
Mhm.
I bought a house like 5 years ago. I'm not going to give my house up.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pay rent in another city and still pay my house payment,
Especially for 50 a night.
especially on $50 a night and $65,000 a year.
Mhm.
So it just wasn't reasonable to me, and that's where some guys started seeing me more as a businessman
Mhm.
instead of a mark for the business and want to be just a superstar, because I'd never really, if the stardom came with it, that was great, but I
Mhm.
wanted to be able to secure my financial future
Mhm.
before I was done with this sport.
Yep.
And that was, honestly, I know it sounds a little, probably selfish and stuff like that, because so many guys are like, oh no, I dreamed of being in this
Mhm.
business. I mean, I had thoughts of being in the business whenever
Mhm.
I was watching it as a kid. Of course, who doesn't? But I never had the end, the way of knowing how to even get into it at that time. So I went on about my life and started being a construction worker, and thought
Mhm.
that would be what happened. What happened at that gym was just by chance,
Yeah.
but I left my home in Virginia. I left my family. I left everything behind. The welding construction career. I was working for my dad. Come on, man.
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I was a pipe welder, so I was making even back then. I was making really good money for the times.
Hmm.
You know. So I mean, I left a lot of security. You
Yeah.
know, so I just wanted to. I just didn't want to jump on anything just because I wanted that opportunity to be seen on TV.
Hmm.
So I just wanted my financial, life to be more straight than my stardom.
Hmm.
So whenever that happened, I called Jimmy back and I signed a contract with the was it SMG, the where they sell all the products on SMG or something like
Hmm.
that. S&M, SM, one of them channels. They sell all the products
The
on
home
TV.
shopping.
That's
Yeah.
exactly it.
Yeah.
There, yeah. So yeah, I signed a contract with them because they're the people who actually invested into the XWF. They put in like $80 million. Okay, yeah. Now here's the story behind that. I signed was a 3-year deal with them, no compete clause. Okay, uh, for a very nice figure. I
Hmm.
was very shocked and happy with it. They put the cruiserweight title on me immediately,
Hmm.
and we went to Orlando. We did like 10 tapings at the studio down there. They started trying to work it through the networks, trying to put it on TV. And then we did like a tour, like a 2-week tour over in Puerto Rico with
Hmm.
WC. And then we went out to the Midwest, did a little tour out in Oklahoma and Texas, and did one more little tour. I think that was out in the Midwest again. And then that was it. But I stayed under contract and I kept getting paid for 3 years. So I got the phone call that the it doesn't look like, because they were telling me something about China had invaded a portion of India
Hmm.
where the factories were. So China gave the people who owned the factories like 1 week to get every single thing out that they possibly can, or the rest of it's going to be theirs. So they took back their $80 million. That's what happened. So, but I kept getting paid because I had a no compete clause.
Hmm.
They did offer to buy it out, but I turned it down. I just
Yeah.
wanted, yeah. So I just kept the money. But within about a month of all of that, Jeff Jarrett called me, and because him and I, whenever I was at the WCW, right that night I signed, actually, we had a conversation in the back. Yeah, I guess he knew something. He knew something before anybody else because he was already putting together TNA.
Hmm.
And he was asking me and certain people, if we would be available or interested, and stuff like that, to work for him. So yeah, so as soon as that whole thing crashed with the XWF, within about a month, I was working for TNA, so I was getting the
Hmm.
paycheck from the no compete clause, and I was getting the paycheck from TNA as well every week because we did one show a week on Wednesdays. We did pay-per-views on Wednesday nights at that time.
Hmm.
I wound up signing with them. Like a year later, I signed with them. So yeah, we're all that way.
And so did that, you being an impact, is that what made WWE, like, they realized what they should have done years prior with your ability and your talent, what they
I'm
passed
not,
up on?
I'm not really sure how that. I know that Tommy Dreamer and Paul Heyman were there,
Hmm.
and Van Dam. A lot of the top ECW guys were there and stuff like that. So, and I think they were on the verge at that point of buying the ECW rights.
Hmm.
Um, so I think of Tommy and Paul might have had an idea of bringing me into the ECW portion,
Hmm.
the company part of it. But when I got there, they just decided that they wanted me to be a SmackDown brand. And
So,
because I asked them, I was like, "Am I going to be a part of the
yeah.
ECW?" And they was like, "No, we don't want you to be a part. Even though you're one of the original guys, we
Hmm.
want the crowd to forget about you were there." And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, we want you to be." We want them to forget about you being an ECW guy. Because even when I wrestled on SmackDown,
Mm-hmm.
the crowd would still chant ECW
Mm-hmm.
whenever I would do a big high flying move, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know if that bothered them or what, but they were like, we don't, we want them to forget that you were there, and we want them to look at you as a SmackDown brand wrestler.
So did
So
you do Deep South and SmackDown
I
instead?
did, yeah, I did Deep South just for a couple of months.
How
I,
was that?
it was fun because you know, I mean, it was, I'm not going to lie, it was hard. I was in my mid 30s by the
Yeah.
time, you know, I'd already had 10, 11 years in the business, you know, so, you know, my body was already a little beat up, you know,
Mm-hmm.
so I was having to train every single day with these kids, you know,
Mm-hmm.
these young guys. Me and Johnny Swinger, though, we were the older guys. So we trained and we did all the squats, we did all the push-ups, we did all the calisthenics, we did all the running. But then during, you know, during the training, we helped build them out a lot,
Mm-hmm.
you know, working with the other guys and stuff like that. So that's, I didn't necessarily had to get in there and actually, you know, run, hit the ropes and a lot, you know, just helped out the guys and stuff. But we did all the calisthenics and stuff like that just to show them that, you know, I'm still in shape. I can still do this. You know,
Mm-hmm.
don't worry. I still got it. I can still do this. It sucks, and I'm older, but you know, I'm not 22 years old like this cat over
Mm-hmm.
here. But I'm doing it. You know, and so yeah, did that, and within a, God, I think 6 weeks. I was only there like a total of like 6 weeks. They called me up. They came down. They brought a lot of agents down one night, one day, and we just got in the ring and started working around and stuff. And I evidently impressed some of the people, and they already knew who I was because I mean,
Yeah.
when they got there, they walked straight up to me and Johnny Swinger and was like, "Hey, well, you know, can't believe you finally made it. You know, it's been we've been trying to get you for years, and you're finally here. You know, that kind of conversation." And then they watched me and stuff, and I think. Michael Hayes and you know guys like that, Tom Pritchard, not Tom Pritchard, but his brother, uh,
Bruce.
Bruce Pritchard. Yeah, those guys were down there, and Ricky Steamboat. So I think they just like, you know, because I was selling my, you know, I'm a seller. You know,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the young guys weren't selling; they were just trying to get their moves in. So I was getting my moves in and selling, and being a ring veteran
Mm-hmm.
and putting the guy over that I was working. You know, selling his shit. You know,
Mm-hmm.
working with him a little bit, and so they like that. And then they came up with the idea of me and Juventud having our angle and for the cruiserweight title and all that stuff. You know,
See, I was that time frame at WWE. It just seems like they had so many people, so many talented people, and
yeah,
if you messed up one time, or if it didn't get over that week, it was like on to the next because they had
yeah,
so many people in developmental. They were just like gone, gone.
and that's the way they still look at it.
Yeah, and I
They,
hate that.
I mean, I mean, honestly, I see what you're saying, and I, you know, have feelings about that too. But on the other side of it, business wise,
Hmm.
you do when you got a company that's $1 billion company and you're on TV how many days a week, how many hours a week,
Hmm.
uh, you're generating the money that you bring in. I mean, yeah, you got to have certain standards and rules, and if it, you know, you got to continuously weed out the dressing rooms.
Hmm.
When you're that big of a company, you got to continuously just watch the dressing room because people, like I was telling you before, I mean, there's a lot of guys that work their asses off. I've seen it 100 times. So many kids get out there and they work so hard, man. They
Hmm.
blood, sweat, and tears. They sign that contract,
Hmm.
kick back. I can cruise now.
Hmm.
Well, then you watch them, and then some of those guys last a little longer than others, you know. But the majority of them, when you watch them from the dressing room, you see
Hmm.
them come in. You see them there for 6 months, and then they just never show up again,
Hmm.
and you never hear from them again. You know, so I mean, I've seen so many of that. So guys just get relaxed as soon as they sign that contract. They think I'm here, I
Hmm.
made it, I'm good. That's when you really got to kick it in.
See, well, I
Shark,
interviewed.
sharks in that
Oh
dressing
yeah.
room, brother, piranha, and they are waiting on you to fuck up
Hmm.
just once so they can take your spot.
Hmm.
And they're patting you on the back. They're buying you breakfast. You know what I'm saying? They're sharing a car with you.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to make some friends. but the
Mm-hmm.
majority of the people, I would say 99, well, 95% of the people that are friendly,
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
turning it and everything. Now, the other 5% are your true friends.
Mm-hmm. See, I interviewed Bill DeMott not too long ago, and he said, when they transitioned from FCW to NXT, a lot of talent was like that. But then when they put all eyes on NXT, it couldn't be. It
Yeah.
wasn't just development anymore. It's a national TV show. It's this.
Well, I think that helped out SmackDown and Raw too,
Mm-hmm.
because for the first time, the big guys were getting shown up.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was talking about the small guys on NXT.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't talking about the big guys on SmackDown and Raw like they had been before. Still talking about them, but there was so much more talk about NXT.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so yeah, I mean, and that really stood out because I mean, think about it. It took NXT to 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 get the small guy out there, as a guy that could run for a heavyweight title or a guy
Mm-hmm.
who could run for a national title instead of the cruiserweight title all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It did, and even though like companies like Ring of Honor, Ring of Honor was just like NXT.
Mm-hmm.
To me, whenever I watch NXT, I'm watching just another branch of Ring of Honor.
Yep.
Um, I was really, I mean, they do put a little bit more selling and wrestling
Mm-hmm.
in NXT than Ring of Honor did, but in all, it's the same. There's really not many rest holds. There's not, but it's just nonstop fucking spot after
Mm-hmm.
spot after spot. And some things that look like that would really truly work, and then some things you got to scratch your head about. Like I don't know how that got over as a popular move, but okay, you know. It's like the Canadian Destroyer. I don't understand that move. I mean, you know what, Petey Williams. I've actually wrestled Petey Williams before back in TNA, and I told him I wouldn't take it because I don't understand it. How in the fuck can you pile drive somebody when you're standing there getting ready to sunset flip them?
Yeah.
They're they're in between your legs. How in the hell are you going from their head to their ass so fucking hard that you're springing their body over top and then landing on their head? Now I can see it if you're doing it off the ropes.
Yeah.
If the guy shoots you off the ropes
Mm-hmm.
and he's going for a backdrop and you do that, yeah, I can see it happening then,
Mm-hmm.
but not from a standing position. it doesn't. It just doesn't make sense. But yeah, I see a lot of I still see a lot of the AEW. I see stuff like that. I mean, but AEW is not a bad little company. I've been
Mm-hmm.
watching here and there. Been watching little things to go on there.
Mm-hmm.
I like Pac.
Mm-hmm.
Pac is good. I actually used to wrestle Pac over in the UK a lot. Went back in the early days before he got muscled up. He was a little skinnier then, but a phenomenal wrestler
Mm-hmm.
even back then. Great guy. I put him over any time of the day. Even back then, I
Mm-hmm.
was the big ECW star, and I put this kid over right in the middle of the ring because that's how impressed I was with him. I knew he was going to be something.
Mm-hmm.
But the other guys, I see some of them other guys, I don't understand why they're getting a spotlight. But then
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of guys that I can definitely see why they are.
Let me ask you one more final question. If you could give any advice to anybody getting into wrestling, what would it be? As honest as you want.
As honest as I want,
Yeah.
you know, don't don't make it your absolute life.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, there's so many things on the outside of the wrestling that need to be a part of your life. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So don't give your heart and your absolute soul to this sport because it's going to end. There's no doubt. And it's really going to be up to you or the promoter how long it's going to last.
Mm-hmm.
I've known guys, I still know, I know guys that are on the independent shows that I've known for over 30 years and never once have even done an enhancement match on WWE or any kind of TV. They've been on the indies their entire life. They tried to make it,
Mm-hmm.
um, they've got some dark job matches before, but they never excelled and went anywhere else with it and stuff like that. But those guys, there's still some of those guys still sitting in that dressing room still to this day, waiting on that shot. And then there's guys like we were discussing earlier, the guys who had a great career,
Mm-hmm.
but with a career, you got to leave a little bit of a legacy,
Mm-hmm.
So my legacy, I did not want to be like Ric Flair is now or
Mm-hmm.
Hulk Hogan was. I don't want to be out there and just squeezing the fucking last little bit out that can possibly come out of that rag. You know what I'm saying? I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to wait for that one last drip. You know, I want to I wanted to go out with some dignity. Look, I had 30 years in this business. I'm a kid from Waynesboro, Virginia. I'm not a second generation wrestler. Never thought I was going to get into it. It just happened. I just happened to be talented enough and athletic enough and had a good enough attitude to meet the right people to help me out. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, because I didn't go to a wrestling school. you know, I didn't. I didn't go to a wrestling school at all. So I learned sitting in the back seat of a car, watching, a former superstar, do his thing. And I learned in other dressing rooms from guys who were top notch indie guys,
Mm-hmm.
that were the bull of the woods of that area, you know. And I mean, I would have never gotten to where I got if it wasn't for guys, in the early days like Eddie Golden and guys like Jason Broyles and just all the other guys that I wrestled in the Tennessee, the East Tennessee area there, man.
Mm-hmm.
So many talented guys that I've watched and been in the ring with and learned from that
Mm-hmm.
never got a shot. So that's what I'm saying. Don't put your whole complete heart and soul in this. Know that it's going to end. Know that you're going to have to do something, and know that it can only, you know what? It can last 30 years. It can last 10 years. It can last 5 damn minutes.
Mm-hmm.
you know, always know that it's going to end. And if you ever do make it in the business, don't take yourself so seriously that you become a complete asshole. you know that's the last thing we want, is people to look at you as an asshole. I mean, a lot of people did me for years, but I took my, I took the business too serious at times
Mm-hmm.
because I was watching people try to eat me up.
Mm-hmm.
Like company, like offices. Like when I was in TNA, I had a very successful career in WWE, had a very successful career in ECW, had a very successful career around the world, everywhere I've wrestled. But then when I go to TNA, they want to treat me like a guy who's going to just get the enhancement talent over.
Mm-hmm.
The people that they want to shine, they're going to use me to do that because I have a name and I have, I'm pretty well known at that time,
Mm-hmm.
whenever I came to TNA. And that's all they wanted me for. But they lied to you, telling you that, they want you to do this and do that. But no, they don't come tell you that. They just keep booking you that way,
Mm-hmm.
until you finally be like, look, dude, you know, I was working with you. Now why are you not working with me?
Mm-hmm.
And then you find out the personalities of certain people. You're like, wait a minute, how could that be an impossible thing to ask somebody?
Yeah.
How could that offend somebody for asking them that? And then when you asking them, these office guys get offended.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, this is my career. This is my name, my career. So I should be the one who has the
Mm-hmm.
say so over this. I feel like I still have a lot to go because I mean, when I left TNA, I went straight to WWE and won the cruiserweight title, and then
Mm-hmm.
became one of a well-known tag team, the Pitbulls. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? I mean, so we didn't last long, but we left an imprint.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
People still ask me about the Pitbulls, still to this day. So um, yeah, man. I mean, just don't take yourself so serious. If you do make it, and just realize that this is going to end at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you don't have any friends in this business,
Mm-hmm.
you really don't. I mean, I can count on one hand how many true friends that I have in the wrestling business for over 30 years. One hand that I would not turn my, that I would that I would feel comfortable turning my back on. You
Mhm.
know, that I would feel comfortable.
Mhm.
Know that they wouldn't talk shit behind my back or try to steal my job or my wife
Mhm.
or anything like that. Which there's so many guys up there, man, in the big time. You got to watch every little thing. Don't ever bring your wife to the show. Don't ever bring her because you'll get divorced. That's for sure.
I
But
just
it,
want to. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, go ahead, man.
I just want to say thank you for taking the time out today. Thank you for all you've done for professional wrestling. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
everything you've ever done.
I appreciate that, man. It's really nice to know that people still remember you and stuff. I've been retired since 2015. I mean, and
Hmm.
I'm a working man now, so I don't really get out very much. I don't go to shows or anything like that. I mean, every now and then, it seems like maybe like once a year I might make it to a show just to watch,
Hmm.
see some people, that I hadn't seen in quite a long time. But yeah, I don't miss anything about it. I mean, I really do. I like my life now. And that's another thing you need to remember if you get into wrestling. What's one of the most enjoyable things that ever happened to me when I retired?
What?
I got to have a cookout.
Yeah.
30 years I never got to do a cookout because I was always on the road or I was at home trying to get shit done so I
Hmm.
could go on the road. And if I wasn't on the road, I was doing indie shows. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? I mean, just driving hours and flying hours and going to Europe, going to Japan, going just everywhere. So
Hmm.
when I retired, one of the first things I did is I got, and another thing, you remember back when you were a kid growing up and you're at home and stuff and you had friends?
Yeah.
But once you leave the wrestling business, you got nothing. You got no
Hmm.
friends unless they call you and keep up. And they'll do that for a little bit after a couple of months. And then the next thing you know, everybody will just kind of once every 6 months call, then a once a year call, then every holiday call, then eventually that'll even stop, that kind of
Hmm.
thing. So, yeah, man. So I built up another little group of friends,
Hmm.
that I like and that I can trust and shit
Yeah.
like that. And we have cookouts and stuff, man. We get together and sit down and drink a Guinness and have a steak and shit, man. I didn't do that for the longest time, man. And it feels good. I like it. Like not to have to get up and have to hit the road now.
Oh
I
yeah.
can sleep in. I don't have to live off of 4 and 5 hour sleep anymore. I
Hmm.
can get a full night's sleep, fall asleep on my couch if I want to, and go to bed when I want to.
Hmm.
I love it.
Well, thank you again, and I truly appreciate everything. And let's
Me
do it
too.
again sometime.
Absolutely, man. Anytime, bro.
Thank you.